With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
Now's the time to save 30% on wedding jewelry, only on BlueNile.com. Make sure your wedding ring is the one with your pick of diamond and lab-grown diamond bands, all hand-finished and graded for excellence. Or surprise her with something blue she'll love for life, like a stunning pair of sapphire earrings. Blue Nile's jewelry experts are available 24/7 to help, from fit questions to style advice. Right now, get up to 30% off at BlueNile.com. BlueNile.com.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we have the first edition of our positional ranking videos and podcasts coming out leading in to training camp this year, about 5-ish weeks until training camp, which gives us plenty of time to hopefully dive into running backs, receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks, linebackers, edge rushers. But today we're doing the testing period and seeing how this goes, seeing if you actually like this, and if you do, leave a like on the video, and don't forget to share and subscribe. But today we are doing our 2024-2025 quarterback tier rankings. Yes, going to tier rank every single starting quarterback, a handful of rookies, maybe even some quarterbacks that eventually are backups in position battles coming into training camp. Going to dive into and tier rank about 40-ish quarterbacks headed into this upcoming season. So without further ado, let's dive into the tier ranking of the quarterbacks this year. As you can see on the screen, I will talk through everything for the video listener or for the audio listeners. And if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or X and Twitter, you can see on your screen the tiers that we are going to rank today is the best, top 5, top 10, above average, mid, below average, you suck, and rookies. And I think it's pretty clear, pretty obvious which quarterback will lead and start off the show today, because if you are a fan of the NFL, there is a clear-cut number one quarterback that I think would top any tier ranking video, and that is Patrick Mahomes. He is far and away the best quarterback in the NFL, now has 3 Super Bowls to his name, unfortunately, 2 of those being against our and my San Francisco 49ers, but you have to give credit to where credit is due. 3 Super Bowls, an MVP, gonna have many, many more likely in his near future, and has a chance, albeit a long way down the road, to become the greatest quarterback of all time. In my opinion, Patrick Mahomes is already the most physically gifted quarterback we've ever seen in NFL history. Bar none, clear cut, the best quarterback. He is the number 1 ranked quarterback in the NFL. I mean, I don't know how you could find somebody else that isn't Patrick Mahomes to be in the best spot. Let's go with the next 2 people on our list. We have Lamar Jackson. Now, I am someone that really likes Lamar Jackson. I'll be the first to admit I was completely wrong about who he was going to be coming into the NFL. Now, to maybe give myself some credit here, I didn't buy into he should change positions, this, that, and the other, but I did not expect to see consistent MVP caliber numbers from Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson is the best running quarterback in the NFL today, and also maybe outside of Mike Vick, and I think you can make an argument he already is better than Mike Vick. He might be the greatest rushing or dual threat quarterback in NFL history. Again, his legs are the best in football. what he can do extending plays, what he can do with his arm, I think is actually underrated. Well, I do think he's not as good as Josh Allen and some of the quarterbacks we'll talk about today with his arm. I think when you add in his legs, Lamar Jackson can win you games simply with his legs. So I will put Lamar Jackson as of now inside the top 5, which brings me to our next quarterback, that is Joe Burrow. And I do want to say two things prior to diving in further into the quarterbacks we are going to rank here. One is that I am going to be ranking the quarterbacks, yes, by tier, but also within the tiers themselves, we will also rank the quarterbacks. So whoever else is inside the top 5, you will see if they're better or worse in Lamar Jackson in my eyes. And then for the rookies, look, you can come out of college, you can have an amazing season like CJ Stroud did last year. We can project what their stats may or may not be. When it comes to rookies, I'm not going to rank them based off their potential in their career. I'm going to rank them based off of where I think or how much success they will have this year. I think that rookies are so tricky because some don't start until week 8. Some start week 1. Others have sometimes coaching changes. Others just have a horrible support system around them, and it's unfair to rank them based off of one horrible year and one great year. So I'm going to rank them based off of, who I think of the rookies this year will have the most success on the field, which could include physical traits, throwing, running, scheme fit, the system they're in, and the players around them picking them up. With that said, let's dive into the next quarterback. That is Joe Burrow. And the one thing about Joe Burrow is the injuries. Because when he's healthy, I think he might be the only quarterback able to give Mahomes an actual run for his money as the best quarterback in football. Now, that said, Joe Burrow is not the best quarterback in football, and he's too injured. The injuries he has had have been catastrophic. Torn the ACL, got hurt last year again. If he can stay healthy, the Bengals are a perennial Super Bowl contender with the offense they have and the quarterback of Joe Burrow's caliber that he is. He can beat anybody. And I think if he's healthy, basing this off if Joe Burrow is healthy, I would rank him ahead of Lamar Jackson. Now, again, that can easily change come year end simply because Joe Burrow gets hurt a lot and Lamar Jackson is a damn good quarterback. But as a dual threat, I think Joe Burrow possesses sneaky pocket presence, arguably maybe the best in football. I know Mahomes is great, but you watch Joe Burrow play within the pocket, he is nasty. There's a reason why he's a national champion. There's a reason why he almost won a Super Bowl against the Rams in 2021. So I have Joe Burrow as of right now inside my top 5, and he may as well just be ending up as my number 2 quarterback in football when it's all said and done. But let's move on to Deshaun Watson. Can we just talk about Deshaun Watson's fall from grace? Now, obviously, there's some nasty, disgusting allegations that were towards him. We're not going to dive into those today because I don't want to dive into those at all. But Deshaun Watson was given a fully guaranteed contract and has played like a backup quarterback to a point where the Browns have actually played better without him on the field in short stints with P.J. Walker, in other quarterbacks, Jacoby Brissett at times. So Deshaun Watson, this was 4 years ago, probably a top 5, top 10 quarterback. But as of right now, Deshaun Watson took a year off of football during the allegations, got suspended on the exempt list, and has come back a shadow of what he once was in football. Maybe it's karma, maybe it's not, I have no idea if you believe in those things, but as of right now, it is hard for me not to put Deshaun Watson inside the below average category simply because when your team plays better with you off the field and with backup quarterbacks, if he wasn't getting paid all that money, I don't think he'd be a starting quarterback in the NFL today, hence why I have him as below average. The next player is Jameis Winston. I know Jameis Winston had that 30-30 season where he threw 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions, and former top 2 overall pick and, Florida State, national champion. He has the pedigree. He has the name value to him, but his play on the field, I know last year there were talks of, maybe it was 2 years ago, of he got LASIK eye surgery. He might be better. And it was like, well, no. Jameis is still Jameis Winston. And there's a lot of good to like with Jameis. The arm talent is there. The issue is the arm accuracy is not. The decision-making is not. And I think it's pretty clear, while I don't think he's in the you suck category, I'm going to put him in below average. I think if Jameis Winston plays for you, you can win a couple games. I think at this point in his career, he's going to be a backup quarterback for the remainder of it, unless he completely changes who he is as a player and a quarterback. But as of right now, Jameis Winston is a below average quarterback in the tier list, which brings us to Mr. Unlimited, Russell Wilson. The Niners, or coming from a selfish point of view, the downfall of Russell Wilson has been beautiful to see. I wish it was when he was in Seattle, not with the Broncos last year. Now with the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. I was someone, when we were doing our power rankings early on in the season last year, I did see some things that Russell Wilson, despite not having a great year, when you look at the entire picture, I thought he was fine. He wasn't terrible. He wasn't good by any means, but I think at this point in his career, with where he was last year with Denver and what he's shown in the Sean Payton system, now with Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, I do think there is reason to believe Russell Wilson can re-find somewhat of the player he once was. Now, what is that exactly? We have no idea at this point, but I do think Russell Wilson is better than Deshaun Watson. I think he's better than Jameis Winston. I will put him and make him our first quarterback in the mid tier. The issue is with Russell Wilson, a player like Russell Wilson, as Robbie439 says here, unplayable, which is a great one, Robbie. He just needs to stick to the script. There's a reason why him and Sean Payton butted heads so much. Sean Payton designed this script with a quarterback like Russell Wilson that should be able to succeed in it. And Wilson consistently wouldn't take checkdowns, wouldn't take the underneath, went for the home run play too much. I'm hoping for Russell Wilson's sake and Pittsburgh Steelers fans' sake that he actually gets back to being the quarterback he once was early on in his career in Seattle, not from a play standpoint, but from a it's team first, not a me first mentality, where I know it was all let Russ cook, this, that, and the other, came to Denver, brand new deal, was traded, wanted to prove something, and ultimately fell flat on his face. I'm hoping in Pittsburgh he can refine what he once was, at least from a stay within the scheme and make the special play when asked for, not trying to force it, which he did consistently last year with the Broncos. And that brings us to the other Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback on our list. That is Justin Fields. It's so funny to look back at the 2021 draft class. Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones, and just sit back and say 4 of those guys are no longer on their team they were drafted by. Many of them are backups now, and Trevor Lawrence is the only one to get extended. That shocks me. That said, I don't think Justin Fields was really given a fair chance in Chicago. A lot of turnover. I don't love the system they have in place there. I wouldn't be shocked if, I think Eberflus is still there, that he ends up getting fired if things go poorly this year with Chicago. I think what Chicago was building, I would have loved to have seen Justin Fields in that. He's not going to get that chance this year. He's now in Pittsburgh with Russell Wilson. And it's funny, if you watch the Madden 25 trailer today, they had Justin Fields on kick returns, which maybe it happens. Justin Fields is arguably the second best rushing quarterback or running quarterback in football right now, just behind Lamar Jackson. Of course, the way the league has shifted, a lot of quarterbacks can run, but simply using his legs, Justin Fields is stellar at using his legs to create space. The issue is there's been some injuries. his timing is not great. You go watch his highlights, you watch his film, you watch this tape on Twitter. Justin Fields' timing is not there. Like in regards to like my mind goes to a Shanahan system where it's all based off timing. You need to be in X, Y, and Z spot, at this exact second. And even backup quarterbacks can succeed in that. For those of you who watched Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco, he wasn't a great quarterback, but he was really good at was timing and putting the ball where it needed to be at the right time, which sure comes with mistakes. And a lot of Jimmy G's mistakes came from trying to do too much and kind of creating his own chaos. Where Justin Fields is very similar to that without the timing, where he can create these amazing plays. Go back to 2021 against the San Francisco 49ers, has that amazing run where he goes to his right, almost gets sacked about 3 or 4 times, goes all the way back to his left around the entire offensive line and defense, and scores a touchdown. It was incredible. What he can do with his legs is phenomenal, and I think in a much more structured system, in a much more, dare I say, this better franchise overall, directional franchise like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who will utilize Fields to his best abilities with their new offense and the new weapons they have there in place for him. This is arguably the best team he's played on so far in his NFL career, and whether he's a backup or a starter, I think Justin Fields could push Russell Wilson for the starting job in Pittsburgh, hence him being the second quarterback in the mid category on the tier list. Now let's jump to CJ Stroud. And I think, going from Justin Fields, the Ohio State quarterback that seemingly failed so far, to CJ Stroud, the Ohio State quarterback that has taken the NFL by the horns, pun intended, with the Houston Texans and has really made it look easy. I mean, I think CJ Stroud, you can argue, he's already a top 10 quarterback. And I want to get ballsy here. I'm going to put CJ Stroud inside my top 5 behind Joe Burrow if he's healthy and behind Lamar Jackson. What we saw with CJ Stroud last year wasn't just impressive. I mean, it was borderline historic to a point of you had people hoping and believing Caleb Williams can do what CJ Stroud did and take the Bears to the playoffs in year number 1. I mean, of course, he was a rookie. There were some mistakes, but CJ Stroud last year played like a top 5 quarterback, and the hope is that with Bobby Slowick staying with the Texans, getting weapons back, adding Stephon Diggs, if Tank Dell can come back and be healthy, I mean, the Texans, dare I say, if all goes well, they could put in a bid for a Super Bowl. Like, that's the hope, and that's the excitement around the Houston Texans right now, and much of that is because of a player like CJ Stroud, who there isn't a lot you can't say. I mean, what are his weaknesses? He can use his legs. He can use his arm. I mean, really the only thing you can point to is maybe being a little overwhelmed in the playoffs, but he was excellent in the playoffs. And so really, like, CJ Stroud for a second-year quarterback, I mean, there's a real chance if he plays as well as he did last year again this year, he's inside the top 3 or 4 behind just, Mahomes, maybe a Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. Like, CJ Stroud has potential to be, Mahomes-like. I won't say he'll be Mahomes, but the potential is certainly there because he was that special in year 1. Let's move on here to Anthony Richardson. Another rookie last year got hurt with the shoulder injury, battled a lot of injuries last year, in fact. But I think as of now, and I want to preface this by saying that Anthony Richardson has the potential to be awesome, has the potential to be a top 10 quarterback in football. He has the arm strength, the arm talent. He has the legs. He has the build you want. In fact, there was a point where last year, before San Francisco knew what Brock Purdy was, or actually 2 years ago, before San Francisco knew exactly what Brock Purdy was, and after the Trey Lance year 1 experiment didn't go well, I was sitting back like, man, if I'm the Niners, I was wishing I traded the 3 first-round draft picks for Anthony Richardson. I mean, he has the talent to be something special to a point of his testing numbers were eerily similar to Dante Culpepper. And you can think what you want of Dante Culpepper's career, but what you can't question is the athletic ability he had when he was with Minnesota. I mean, he was lighting up the NFL. Now, will Richardson do that? Time will tell. But I think as of now, I will put him in mid, ahead of Russell Wilson, ahead of Justin Fields. But don't get it twisted. The only reason why he's here is because there's very little tape and play time on his track record and the injuries he has had, where we just haven't seen much. But there's a world where this year he jumps to above average, then he finds himself kind of inching towards this top 10 in the next 2 or 3 years. I really, 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 really like Anthony Richardson if he can just stay healthy. Let's look at some comments here on the YouTube chat. Kenny Niner says, can't CJ Stroud's success be based on the fact that nobody saw it coming? DC's will be ready for him this year. Well, I don't think you can not see the second quarterback in the draft taken last year. I think when you outplay, it's not like Stroud was Brock Purdy. Some of the naysayers against Brock Purdy was, well, he's a 7th round pick, Mr. Irrelevant. No one saw that coming. If you're a top 5 pick and a quarterback nonetheless, people see it coming. I mean, people are going to see it coming. So I wouldn't say so. Kenny also says, why is Mahomes the best? He had 17 turnovers and was the 8th ranked quarterback on QBR. Well, simply because he has 3 Super Bowls. He's been to 4. He beat the Niners last year, which were probably the best team in the entire league outside of the Kansas City Chiefs. And his track record would say he's the best quarterback in football. That is why. Now, yes, there were times he struggled last year, and you can argue the Chiefs probably shouldn't have been in the Super Bowl as a whole. That said, they won the whole thing, and I have no reason to discredit him whenever it seems like Mahomes is done, he somehow finds a way. Moving on to somehow the comeback player of the year this past year, I believe. I don't know how he did it. I don't know how Joe Flacco, at near 40 years old, rekindled the magic he once had with the Ravens and found himself playing in the playoffs against CJ Stroud. But Joe Flacco, whether he plays this year or doesn't play this year, whatever he tends to do or chooses to do, Joe Flacco, at least last year, if he plays this year at any point, is going to find himself in the below average category behind Deshaun Watson and ahead of Jameis Winston. Joe Flacco is someone that, man, again, I really don't know what to do because Joe Flacco is someone that really shouldn't be playing in the NFL at this moment. He's almost 40, but kudos to him. He's a backup quarterback at this point in his career, obviously. He's someone that saved the Cleveland Browns season, and they had an historic run to the playoffs last year. If I might say, him and Amari Cooper saved my fantasy football season to a point that I finished second place behind my now wife. I coached her team, don't worry. But Joe Flacco was really special last year. Now, I would expect things to not be as magical this year as they were last year, but he's a valuable piece to an offense, at least in a quarterback room, to help and teach young players. And if you're the Cleveland Browns, you know, you're kind of wishing Joe Flacco can go on there again if you had a chance, but you got to play Deshaun, and you made the choices you did. He's a smart guy, veteran player, won a Super Bowl, been to multiple playoffs. Joe Flacco, talent-wise, below average, but maybe the intellect might move him up somewhat if he actually played more, because he ain't a you suck, he ain't a rookie, and by all intents and purposes, might be the prototypical best backup quarterback in football currently, unless you want to find a rookie somewhere in that grouping. The next player, the guy who got the next or the last best contract, the largest contract tied with Joe Burrow in the NFL, that is Trevor Lawrence. I like Trevor Lawrence, but he continues to come up short continually. I think that coming into this year, he just got paid. We've talked about before why the Jaguars had to pay Trevor Lawrence, and they should have, mind you, but Trevor Lawrence, I've seen rankings where he is top 5 or he's top 10, and I think he's around the middle of the pack in the NFL. So he'll be the first quarterback in the above average category. I mean, he was arguably the greatest quarterback prospect besides Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning, but Trevor Lawrence has struggled to stay consistent. There's been some injuries, and while Jacksonville hasn't always helped him, they didn't pay Calvin Ridley. They went and got Gabe Davis. They have Christian Kirk. They have some weapons out there. Evan Ingram is still there. They've been rumored to want a big name receiver. They just brought in the guy from LSU this past year during the draft. So he's going to have the weaponry, hopefully, to make a run. And I think the one thing I hold on to in regards to Trevor Lawrence is they almost took Mahomes out in the playoffs 2 years ago. They had Mahomes dead to rights, as many teams do, and couldn't finish the job. I think that, I think given, if Lawrence has one consistent season where he's not turning the ball over too much, he's not throwing 2 or 3 picks, he's coming up in big moments, which, again, has been hit or miss so far, I think I would feel more confident putting him inside the top 10, but so far in what he's shown us, there's been more quarterbacks, whether drafted 2nd, 3rd, 7th round, that have been more successful, more consistently than Trevor Lawrence. So at the moment, he will go in the above average category, and if all is said and done, he'll probably be around my 14th ranked quarterback, maybe inside the top 15 when it's all said and done. That brings us to Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph, the person that was victimized by Myles Garrett for a variety of reasons a handful of years ago. He came in and he saved the Pittsburgh Steelers season last year. Mason Rudolph's just not good. That said, he doesn't suck. He's just not very good. He's a bottom tier backup quarterback, and I have him currently ranked one slot ahead of Jameis Winston inside the below average category. If you can't tell already, the mid/below average category will be the backup quarterbacks mainly on the tier list. There isn't much to say about Mason Rudolph. He is what he is. He's not very good. He's a journeyman. He'll make a roster somewhere, but you don't want him starting for your team unless there is disaster in the air. The next quarterback is Will Levis. And the thing about Will Levis, like many quarterbacks you're going to find in the mid-tier, is it's his 2nd year in the NFL. So there was some good early on, especially when he first came in as a starter for the Titans. Then as the year progressed, he kind of trickled out and, didn't play well. So for that reason, while I do think there is reason to believe in Will Levis where he can be a Ryan Tannehill-esque starter, he'll have, 4 or 5 good seasons, but he isn't really the guy for you going forward. I have him in the mid-tier, and I have him ranked as my last quarterback in the mid-tier so far, behind Richardson, Russell Wilson, and Justin Fields. Okay, here we go. We are going to dive into our first rookie quarterback of the list. And remember, we are not ranking rookies on who I think will be the best the next 10 years. It's simply based on their who I think will have the most success this upcoming season. Okay? The first quarterback is Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix, you could argue he went to the perfect place for him, not named the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings got their own young quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. But I think Bo Nix, with Sean Payton at the helm, unlike Russell Wilson, Bo Nix is a quarterback that will fall in line. He will do exactly what Sean Payton says. And I think you will see the Denver Broncos, while they're not going to be good, I think you will see them be able to sustain more drives. It's not going to be a bunch of home run plays, but a lot of slants over the middle. Sean Payton really liked Bo Nix enough to take him inside the top 15. And I think while, yes, there was some desperation there by Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos, I do think that Bo Nix went to arguably the best spot for him. Now, that roster isn't great. The offense isn't great. The defense is not great either. But I do think in regards to head coach, rookie quarterback tandems, I think Sean Payton will benefit Bo Nix a lot. Now, we'll see where he stands at the end of the tier list, but I think he'll rank relatively high amongst rookies who I think will have the most success this year. That said, I don't know when he starts for the Broncos. Is he a week 1 starter? Does Zach Wilson start for them? I don't know. Obviously, training camp has yet to happen, but heading into camp, I would hope Bo Nix starts. But I also wouldn't be surprised if, around week 4 or 6, that's when Bo Nix finally comes onto the field and finally starts for Denver. And I think it might benefit him somewhat to sit a little bit with Sean Payton to pick his brain. He's an older quarterback, mind you, but I do think that for a head coach like Sean Payton, who wants things so meticulous and so perfect, and if Bo Nix starts to play hero ball, it'll be bad news for Nix in his playing time. But I think if you give him some time to kind of sit and learn and watch Payton, how he operates in that offense, in that scheme, in that system, if we don't see Bo Nix until week 4 or 6, I wouldn't be surprised. And I also wouldn't be surprised that if we don't see him till then, he actually gets a running start into his career and plays relatively well in year number 1. The next quarterback is the guy that could start over Bo Nix for a very, very, very short period of time. That is Zach Wilson. And this, I hate to say this because I think Zach Wilson wasn't given, the New York Jets are a mess, and they have been for about a decade now. And you thought that with Joe Douglas and Saleh in the building that they'd be able to figure things out, but Zach Wilson also faltered there, but it just seems like his personality, their personality, the city, it just didn't mesh well. It's hard to get a quarterback in New York to work.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Ask the Giants outside of Eli Manning. Ask the Jets outside of maybe Mark Sanchez for 2 years and maybe Chad Pennington for a handful of seasons. But Zach Wilson, now with the Broncos, he'll be our inaugural "You Suck" quarterback. I think there's potential there enough where Sean Payton might feel comfortable with him starting for a handful of weeks, but ultimately Zach Wilson will Zach Wilson himself and somehow find his way to the bench once again, allowing Bo Nix to usurp him and become the hopeful franchise quarterback of the Denver Broncos. Let's go to Jarrett Stidham, Jarrett Stidham's fine. He's below average. He is the generic quarterback that can use his legs, has an okay arm, a Belichick system he was a Belichickian quarterback, was a Raider a couple years ago, played really well against the Niners, I think week 17, and just kind of found himself on that roster because of plays like that, because of games like that. Is he great? No. Are you mad he's on your team? No. He's your second or third quarterback. He's a vet at this point, and he finds himself behind Jameis Winston on the below average tier. Moving on to Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell, he's fine. He's fine. Aiden O'Connell is fine. He's not great. He'll run the offense, as you say, and he won't do anything else spectacular. He's someone that if you have Josh Jacobs on your team, you want Josh Jacobs carrying the ball 30 times a game, 25 times a game, and you want Aiden O'Connell to just be the point guard. Just be the guy that throws screens, slants, underneath stuff. Let the playmakers do their job. Aiden O'Connell goes behind Jarrett Stidham in the below average category and will be the last quarterback to fall on the below average category. Then that brings us to Gardner Minshew, the man who will likely be starting ahead of Aiden O'Connell with the Las Vegas Raiders. I am someone that actually really does like Gardner Minshew. I do buy into the Minshew mania. Last year with the Colts, I thought he surprised a lot of people. He's had success with the Jaguars, Indianapolis last year. I wouldn't be surprised, albeit I wouldn't expect a playoff run. I could see him pushing the Raiders to near playoff runs forever, how long he is there. He's not the guy you want there for the long term, but to be successful in a handful of seasons, Antonio Pierce is the head coach there. I I think for now it's a good placeholder at the quarterback position. And if things go terribly wrong, Aiden O'Connell isn't the biggest drop-off, but I do think what Minshew possesses over many backup quarterbacks or placeholder quarterbacks is the actual ability to win games in the NFL and go toe-to-toe with players like Lamar Jackson, like he did last year with the Colts. Will he need defensive help? Yes. Does it help when you have Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss as your running backs? Of course. Will it help him now with Las Vegas? He has Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers and others in that room. Yes, he's not perfect. He's not great. And dare I say, he is below average, but I do think that in the below average tier, he ranks really high to a point of he's borderline mid at this point in the tier ranking, which brings us to Justin Herbert. Am I the only one that goes back and forth on Justin Herbert? One week he's elite. The next week he's falling apart late in the game, or his defense is, and that's not his fault by any means, but I know he hasn't had the best coaching, and I'm going to base this off what I think he will do this year with Jim Harbaugh in the building, with Greg Roman in the building. I think Justin Herbert finally has a leader at the head coach position to a point of he will motivate Herbert. Jim Harbaugh is a hard ass, and he will make sure guys are in the right spot, and if you're not there, you're not going to be on the team. While yes, they do have a little, SoCal Niner vibes, Navarro Bowman, Greg Roman, now Harbaugh, and others in that room, I do think what Jim Harbaugh does is he brings a level of class, consistency, and maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just seeing him in San Francisco for a long time, seeing him motivate quarterbacks like Alex Smith, like Colin Kaepernick in Michigan, like J.J. McCarthy, seeing what he got out of all of those guys along his way back to the NFL and in the NFL in his previous stints. I think Justin Herbert, some days I teeter on top 5. Again, I think right now Herbert's our first top 10 quarterback, and I think he might finish as our 6th best quarterback in the NFL at the moment. Obviously, this season has to play out, but I really am buying into the Harbaugh and the Harbaugh and Herbert connection. Does he have receivers? No, as Kenny points out, you're right. But man, I think what Herbert possesses, if you put him on a team like the Bengals or a team like the Texans or Kansas City or a team like the Niners or other Dallas Cowboys, I think Herbert will be blowing teams out of the water. You put Herbert with Sean McVay the past 3 or 4 years instead of Matthew Stafford, they likely have a Super Bowl ring still. Like, that's how good he is, and he's super young, just got paid. I just want to see a little bit more before I put him inside the top 5. I actually want to see him be successful, win a playoff game, and not blow a playoff game against the Jacksonville Jaguars before I say he's top 5 material. But there are some weeks he's top 5, some weeks he's like top 15. I think an average inside the top 10 is the fairest eval of Justin Herbert. Which brings us to everyone's favorite quarterback, America's quarterback, Dak Prescott. Who is Dak Prescott? Where does Dak Prescott rank inside the tier list? Dak Prescott, the man, he's a great person. Outstanding man. Never in trouble off the field. He cries when he gets hurt because he cares so much. He is a vulture in regards to regular season statistics. When it comes to playoff time, he falters. Is there an argument to make Dak Prescott a top 10 quarterback? Sure. The success is there. The longevity's been there. He maybe plays quarterback in the toughest place to be a quarterback in football, minus the New York City or New York Jets and the New York Giants. The Dallas Cowboys expect a ton from their players, and Dak Prescott wears that on his sleeve every single day. But like I already said, come playoff time, you lose to San Francisco in back-to-back seasons. You lose to the Green Bay Packers in humiliating fashion last year. I think had Dak beaten the Packers and had Dak put up a fight against San Francisco the following week or weeks, I think I would have put him inside the top 10, but because of what he did last year and his consistent, playoff fumbles and whatever, I think Dak Prescott is going to lead our above average category just outside the top 10. He's almost there, but I get it. Dak's a meme. Sometimes there's embarrassing things he does, but I do think that Dak Prescott is actually a really good quarterback that just can't get over the hump. That is the NFL playoffs, which takes us to Daniel Jones. The Daniel Jones discussion is so funny because he shouldn't have been paid. So I can't fault him for being paid what he's getting paid. I would have said yes to that contract too. The Giants were dumb enough to actually pay him, but I think Daniel Jones fits right behind Deshaun Watson in the below average tier, right ahead of Gardner Minshew. Daniel Jones can win you a handful of games. He can take you to the playoffs as a wild card team. He's fine. I don't love him. He's not mid to me. I think he's one of the better running quarterbacks in football. You can argue he's probably top 5. You have Lamar, Justin Fields. You can get into a conversation eventually about Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray and others. I think Daniel Jones is actually pretty good in the read option offense. I think he's good enough to be, a 9-8 win quarterback during the season. He's fine. He can keep your franchise afloat, but he's not going to win you a lot of games. Come playoff time, they got lucky against the Vikings a handful of years ago. If Dak's going to Dak, Cousins is going to Cousin, right? And so I think Daniel Jones, for what he's worth, a handful of injuries so far in his career, I wouldn't be surprised if, whether this year or next year, he's gone and off the Giants. There was conversations this year where could they draft McCarthy? Could they draft Bo Nix? Maybe Michael Penix? So there's already a lot of talk of moving him from the Giants elsewhere, and I wouldn't be surprised if he fails again, that those conversations continue. That brings us to Drew Lock. Drew Lock, the Eagle beater last year. Up there in Lumen Field in Seattle in prime time. I like Drew Lock. Do I love him? No. Do I think he looks like the discount version of Jacoby Shaddix, the lead singer of Papa Roach? Yes. That said, I do think Drew Lock is a below average quarterback. He's a fine backup quarterback. I have him actually ahead of Joe Flacco on my list simply because while Flacco's a smarter quarterback, performed better, I think Drew Lock does have a higher physical ability than Joe Flacco. And I think Drew Lock, even against San Francisco, while he wasn't expected to win those games last year, I think in the game they played against, at Levi's last year, actually played pretty well. And again, you beat the Philadelphia Eagles last year, which in hindsight maybe isn't that big of a deal, but I do think the loss to Drew Lock and the fashion in which they beat the Eagles really just sent Philadelphia into a tailspin, or post-Niners loss tailspin of just ruining their season. And Drew Lock is a proponent of that. So I want to give him his credit. I think he's great. No. Would I want to play him? Yes. If I was an opposing team. But overall, he's fine. I think he's above O'Connell and Stidham and Winston and Rudolph and Flacco, but behind players like Watson, Jones, and Minshew. Which brings us to Tommy DeVito. I'm not going to don the fedora like his mobster sport agent. And I think, despite some miracle wins last year, Tommy DeVito belongs in the you suck category. He's below average, and he's not a rookie. If he's playing for you, despite some miracle wins last year, you are hoping and praying you can find somebody else and actively looking for another quarterback to replace him after the game. He's a nice guy, great guy. Story was phenomenal last year, but he just isn't much of a talent. He'll be probably the quarterback 3 on a team. He's there in the building. He's likable. He brings some energy. He's got the Italian history up there, with the hand, eating some meatball subs with the mobster agent and his father. It's a great story, but Tommy DeVito, like Zach Wilson, he stinks. The next quarterback is Jalen Hurts. Now, Jalen Hurts is, dare I say, one of the more controversial quarterbacks in the NFL. Mainly because he got paid so much money, had a really, really great year two years ago, almost won a Super Bowl. That said, Jalen Hurts at the end of last year was horrible, to a point of the Philadelphia Eagles offense that ran through him couldn't function. The receivers quit. He essentially quit. I mean, it was like everything fell apart and he couldn't reel it back in. Great quarterbacks, top 5 quarterbacks, top 10 quarterbacks can reel teams back in. I don't know if Jalen Hurts is that guy. There's a reason why Philadelphia structured the contract the way he did. They like him as a person. They like him as a player. They're just not in love with him as a player. And I think you watch him at Bama, you watched him in Oklahoma, you watch him now in Philadelphia. He's a grinder. He's a fighter. I like him as a person. He's a great mentality, someone you can root for and get behind. I just think right now he finds himself eerily similar to Dak Prescott. So I'm going to put him behind Dak Prescott in the above average category and ahead of Trevor Lawrence. I think right now, I think that's a great spot for him, just outside the top 10. And I think him and Prescott are eerily similar, where I can see Hurts in the next 5 years or whenever his contract's over with in Philadelphia, having 4 playoff runs, maybe a handful of division titles, but losing a couple times early in the playoffs and never really finding it again in regards to the magic they had in 2023, right? Or 2022, excuse me. Just not been there for Jalen Hurts outside of 1 year. And if the last year is where he's going to be this year, without Jason Kelce, things might get ugly in Philadelphia. Nick Sirianni, he's a fine head coach. I just don't think that he's mature enough when things go awry to aid Hurts in picking the pieces back up. Whereas Hurts, I think, could, but when everything crumbles, it's not just on the quarterback. Some of it is certainly. Getting your guys in the right spot definitely is, but I think Philadelphia last year, if it was a wake-up call for them, they can get back on track. Hurts could be a top 10 quarterback again, but as of right now, after last year, heading into this year, just outside the top 10 for me. Which brings us to our second rookie on the list, Jaden Daniels, who was actually in the news for talking to Brandon Ayuk on FaceTime or whatever it was, about they don't want me in San Francisco, talking to Jaden Daniels, former Arizona State quarterback, LSU last year, drafted number 2 overall by the Washington Commanders. I like Jaden Daniels. I just think he went to a pretty bad place for a rookie. I think Washington, they're in flux. They're looking for answers. Adam Peters is the GM now. With the Commanders, had a pretty good draft so far, but a lot of improving pieces, obviously. I think what they're building over there in a couple years could be fun. But again, rookies are based off who I think will have the most success this season. And I think what Jaden Daniels doesn't truly possess yet is the timing. Is in an offense, in a team led by Dan Quinn, are they really going to have this easy system for a rookie quarterback? Well, I do think Dan Quinn is more equipped as a head coach now than what he was with Atlanta back in 2015 through 2017 or whatever it was when they went to the Super Bowl. I think Dan Quinn's more equipped mentally now, but I'm not sure if what the Commanders have around him and the offense they are going to run benefits him the most. They have Terry McLaurin, they have Jahan Dotson. They have plenty of talent. While the offensive line isn't great, I do think Jaden Daniels, one thing that will actually get him crushed is playing behind the offensive line of the Commanders. They didn't really do much to improve it this year. They've let Charles Leno go. They have some holes there. And the last thing you want is for a dual threat expected to be somewhat mobile quarterback in Jaden Daniels. You don't want those guys playing behind bad offensive lines, because then you get Trey Lance's, where in week 2, they break their foot. Now, I'm hoping Jaden Daniels stays healthy, but for a young quarterback, I expect him to be in a ton of pressure this year, which leads to higher turnovers, more picks, And when you're running for your life, you're going to make mistakes, which leads to more 3-and-outs and less success on tape and on film and in the box score. Hence why I'm putting Jaden Daniels behind Bo Nix in the rookie tier just headed into this year. Although I do want to specify and say this, that Jaden Daniels should, if all goes well, be a much better quarterback than Bo Nix when their careers are over with. This is not a projection of who they will be their entire career. It's just who I think will be the most successful this season. That brings us to Marcus Mariota. Let's make this very clear. Mariota stinks, okay? He stinks so much. I'm going to put him ahead of Tommy DeVito, but the train is just so far gone for Mariota. He was terrible with the Eagles last year. He was really, really, really bad. And I think that for him, I get it. Former top 2 pick, Titan, went to playoffs a handful of times. Falcons a couple years ago, albeit there's been some talk, if you watch the quarterback Netflix series where he kind of quit on the team. I think for Mariota, right now it's more about getting a paycheck over actually playing, which I don't blame him if you can. By all means, do so. But I just think if he's playing for you and he's your backup quarterback, well, on paper, there is some name value there based off his draft position almost a decade ago now. I think the ship has sailed on Mariota as a quarterback in the NFL. If you're Philadelphia, you're actively looking, whoever he plays for now, Philadelphia last year, but you're actively looking for another backup quarterback to hope he doesn't actually play for you this year. I think, if I was a team, I would take a risk on Zach Wilson over Marcus Mariota at this point. I just think his career is over with and he's done. But there really isn't much to say on him. He's just not good anymore. Okay, this is what everyone wants to talk about. Everyone wants to talk about Caleb Williams. He's painting his fingernails. No more an overall pick. Will he be the next great Bears quarterback? Which there haven't been many, to be honest with you, at least in the past 20 years. I think the Bears' best quarterback the last 20 years was arguably Rex Grossman, maybe Jay Cutler. But other than that, it's been really bad for the Bears. Caleb, I think, will have the best rookie season of the rookie class. I'm not someone who's going to propel him into the top 10. I've seen many rankings that are like, he's a top 5 quarterback right now. Does he possess some of these incredible physical traits? Sure. That said, if you go back and watch him at USC, well, a lot of it is special. The arm talent is there, undoubtedly there. I do think a lot of what Caleb gets knocked for is fair and unfair, to a point of he's playing hero ball a lot of times at USC simply because he has to. When it comes to Caleb Williams, the Bears have probably put him in the best position a rookie quarterback has ever been in. DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet, an improved offensive line to a point of Tevin Jenkins wants an extension. The defense has gotten better. I think, with the Bears where they're headed, Caleb Williams is in a great place to propel them ahead of maybe a team like the Vikings, a team like the Packers, or at least keep them in the fight for the NFC North for the next decade. Now, will he be this all-pro, perennial Pro Bowler, one of the greats of all time? He hasn't played a single snap yet. Time will tell. But I do think Caleb Williams in year one, simply based on what he has around him, should have an amazing rookie season. If he doesn't, I think we're talking about being a letdown. But I think, who he is as a person, as a player, a lot to like, a lot to love. I do want to see him play within a structure more. I'm an Oklahoma Sooner fan. I have seen Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Caleb Williams all play in the Lincoln Riley system. It's not the most pro-ready system. And I think for a team like USC last year, which, year 2 for Lincoln Riley, I believe it was year 2 for Lincoln Riley, there's a lot to like from quarterbacks. He's the quarterback guru, right? Again, he's got all those guys drafted. He had back-to-back first overall picks, Baker and Kyler, for the right reasons. I just wonder with Caleb, when you put him in the NFL structure, will he be able to stick with it? Because there was so much hero ball last year with USC and at Oklahoma at times. I just wonder if that's there. I hope he succeeds. I really do. But my only hesitation is once it gets to Chicago in training camp in the regular season, what will he actually look like within the NFL schemes, systems, fits with the timing, and can he play in that structure? The next quarterback we have to talk about is Jared Goff. Jared Goff coming off arguably the best year of his entire career. I think Jared Goff cemented himself inside the top 18 quarterbacks. I think I would not fault you for saying he should be inside the top 10. He had a great year last year. I think as of now, I would put him behind Trevor Lawrence simply because, like this grouping right here, Prescott, Hurts, Lawrence, and Goff, they all have the exact same thing in common. Great regular seasons. Get to the playoffs and you're like, what the heck happened? Now, Goff had his team in position to go to the Super Bowl, and he fumbled it away, literally threw it away late in the game. I think Jared Goff and the Lions are in for a phenomenal season, but is Jared Goff, is his potential as good as Lawrence, Hurts, and Prescott's or even Herbert's? I don't think so. I think he's a good quarterback. I think Jared Goff, this above average tier is very fluid, right? On a week-to-week basis, they could be top 15, top 10, top 8. Like, let's be clear here. The top 5 rankings will shift throughout the entire year. These guys are inside the top 5. These guys are inside the above average tier. But as week by week goes by, as month by month goes by, a player like Jared Goff in a great system with Detroit and Ben Johnson, with the weapons they have there, if there's a real chance if he has back-to-back top 10 quarterback seasons, we're talking, Jared Goff, top 5 quarterback in the NFC, and yes, top 10 quarterback in the NFL. At this moment, I don't think I'm ready to do that just yet, but if he has a great season like he did last year, man, I think Jared Goff has shaken off a lot of the system quarterback name-calling, if you want to say, or labeling that he once had. I think he's shaken it off pretty well, but I think one more year is what I have to see from Jared Goff, which brings us to Jordan Love. Now, you're going to hear everything I said about Jared Goff, and you're going to hear what I say about Jordan Love. You're going to say, what in the world is this guy talking about? I think Jordan Love, going into this year, and the way he ended last season, has a higher potential than Jared Goff. Dare I say at times, Trevor Lawrence. I think it's much higher than Jalen Hurts. I think it's at least equal to Jordan Love, Dak Prescott. I think Jordan Love at the moment, I think I'd make him my number 10 quarterback in the NFL. I think Jordan Love, we saw his breakout last year. And I think if he puts together, 1 to 2 months of this upcoming season, the way he ended last year and carries it over, you could dare say the Packers did it again. And I think that, Jordan Love, for everything he showed, should have beat San Francisco. I could have argued that if the Lions and Packers would have played, they beat the Lions earlier in the season. So I think that the battle for the NFC North is going to run through Detroit, obviously. But I think Jordan Love, from a quarterbacking standpoint, showed that there's a top 10 quarterback in there somewhere. Now, will it happen? Time will tell. We can look back on this in 1 year's time and say, Jesus, Sterling, you're an idiot. But I'm pretty comfortable putting Jordan Love inside my top 10 at this very moment, based off how he ended last year in the playoffs. I get it. There were a handful of picks to end the year against San Francisco, and they had that game won. But young quarterback, first ever playoff run, I expect some bumps in the road coming into now his second year as the full-time starter. I mean, Jordan Love was special towards the end of the year, whereas Hurts and Prescott and even Lawrence and Goff although Goff the best of the above average guys. I think the peaks in that, I think Jordan Love had better peaks over Jared Goff. But again, time shall tell. That brings us to Sam Darnold. Last year, the Niners' backup quarterback. This year, the expected Vikings starting quarterback, if you believe Kevin O'Connell, the head coach in Minnesota. I'm going to slot him right in between Gardner Minshew and Drew Lock. I think Sam Darnold's fine. I think if he's your backup quarterback, he has a good arm talent, more mobile than people think, but the decision-making is a big question for him. It was with the Jets. It was in Carolina. You didn't see it much in San Francisco. He was the most successful quarterback in the preseason last year for San Francisco, but that doesn't mean much. I think Sam Darnold, if you believe Kevin O'Connell, in that system, with those weapons, I do think Sam Darnold could actually be relatively successful. But again, like Minshew, like a Drew Lock, maybe like Daniel Jones, Will Levis, he's just a placeholder. All he is a placeholder for the next guy. And the next guy is J.J. McCarthy, who at this very moment, although it's not very high, I've had him as the 4th ranked rookie this year. I think McCarthy, what he can do as a quarterback, fits exactly what a Shanahan system wants.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
The timing is there. He knows where to be and when to be with the football. I think the arm talent's underrated. Do I think he should have been drafted as a first-round quarterback? That is not my decision to say. I think, a couple of years ago, he wouldn't have been, but he went to Michigan, put in the work, worked with Harbaugh, got himself right, and I think he's someone that you can trust. I think with the offense they have there and Jay Jettas, and hopefully once Hawkinson comes back and they have Aaron Jones, behind a relatively okay Vikings offensive line that has 2 really good tackles, I think McCarthy could actually be pretty successful. I'm just not sure how much he's going to start this year because of Sam Darnold. They're kind of similar in talent at this very moment. Now, that could easily work in McCarthy's favor, but as of right now, Daniels will start over, Daniels will play more than McCarthy. Nix and Williams will both play before McCarthy even does. So that's where I'm kind of basing this off of, where you may see McCarthy for 6 to 8 games, whereas you may see Williams all year, Nix maybe all year, and Daniels for sure all year barring injury. So that's where I have the hesitation, but I do like McCarthy a lot in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time, once he eventually surpasses Darnold on the depth chart. Moving on to Kirk Cousins, the Atlanta Falcons' new quarterback. What a start to the Cousins-Falcons regime, where he leaves Minnesota because he knows, or they say they can't promise they're not going to draft a quarterback. What do? They draft a quarterback. Cool, great, he wants to leave. He goes to Atlanta, a place that you assume they're not going to draft a quarterback. And what do? They draft a quarterback, which wild overreach on their behalf, but coming off an injury, paying big money to Kirk Cousins on that team with Drake London and Kyle Pitts and many other weapons, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Raheem Morrison, now the head coach, who he has ties to with Washington back in the day. I like Kirk Cousins a lot. Now, what does that mean? I think Kirk Cousins is an above-average quarterback that, just like Dak Prescott, Hurts, Lawrence, and Goff, continues to struggle in the playoffs. That's where I have him. That's where I'd put him. As my dog shakes his head behind us and flaps his ears, I think Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. I think, like Dak Prescott, he's a regular season vulture of stats, yards, and touchdowns. Come the playoff time, you just can't trust him. There's a reason why primetime Kirk Cousins is a bad thing, not a good thing. I like iced out Kirk. I wish him well in Atlanta. I just would not put my money on him being a great quarterback, but he's good. He can carry your franchise. He's a stand-up guy. He's a good father, just like every other person in the above-average category. Dak Prescott, good guy. Hurts, good guy. Lawrence, Goff, Cousins, good guys. You can root for all of them to be good. Just, they're never going to truly be great. The next quarterback we have on the list is the guy now behind Kirk Cousins, and I'll just put this out there point blank. Michael Penix shouldn't play this year. And because of that, he is dead last on the rookie quarterback ranking. If he does play, Kirk obviously isn't healthy. And if by chance Penix does play, he's a statue back there. He has the arm talent. I think in the offense, he can succeed. I just think it was a long play for Atlanta where he may not play for 2 or 3 years, which, if you're cool with that, fine. The issue is he's an older quarterback. He needs to play, and you have Kirk. Is the plan for in 2 years to cut Kirk and move off? I don't think so, but I don't run things out there in the ATL. I just don't think Penix will play, thus my last ranked rookie quarterback. That brings us to last year's number 1 overall pick, which is Bryce Young. I like Bryce Young. I think he went to a horrible situation last year. Already a head coach change, entire regime change out there. Just a bad place to be. That said, they spent a ton of money to bring in talent for him. Now, will that talent pan out? We will see. Arguably behind the worst offensive line last year, they made sure to spend money on the offensive line to protect him. I think that certainly helps his production this year. I'm just not sure how much. I think potentially he's better than Fields, better than Russell Wilson, but as of right now, not knowing what that looks like this year, I'm going to put him ahead of Will Levis, but I'm going to put him behind Fields and Wilson simply because I need to see Bryce Young actually prove something. The talent at Bama was there. Like, he has the potential to be awesome. It's just, in Carolina, at this point in time in 2024, Carolina is where things go to die. And if you are Bryce Young, you are wishing you were picked number 2 overall because you do not want to be with the Carolina Panthers. This brings us to, it seems like a chat favorite so far in Derek Carr, Derek Carr, if you watched Derek Carr last year and you took away anything from him, it should have been 2 words. It is, you suck. Derek Carr, what happened, my guy? What happened? Derek Carr used to be an MVP or near MVP. He didn't win it, but 13-3 with the Raiders. If he didn't get hurt, maybe he would have been the MVP. He goes to the Saints. You're thinking, okay, it's a fresh start. And now he becomes, or he's always been this way, but it's more on display now with the Saints, check down merchant to a point of Alvin Kamara has 12 catches for 12 yards, all on screen passes. At certain times, Derek Carr is utterly scared to throw the football past the line of scrimmage with games on the line. We clowned Kirk Cousins during the playoffs against the Giants for throwing the ball short of the sticks. I get it. You can't do that. It was rightfully done. Derek Carr does that every single week for the Saints. He sucks. If I could, Derek Carr might be the worst veteran quarterback based off contract, based off play, based on production there is in the entire NFL. He's worse. Like, I'd much rather have Drew Lock, Joe Flacco is darn near 40 in the retirement home. Rather have Sam Darnold. Rather have Mason Rudolph. I ain't got to pay those guys over $25, $30 million a year to be on my bench because players like Jameis Winston and whoever the other guys out there with the mohawk, whatever, who plays tight end and quarterback and running back, whatever he was. Like, I mean, man, Derek Carr, I would not be shocked not be shocked if our next quarterback, Spencer Rattler, shoots up, probably wrong verbiage there, but shoots up the depth chart of the New Orleans Saints. And right now I have him ranked ahead of Michael Penix again. I'm not sure how much Rattler actually plays, but again, being an Oklahoma Sooner fan, he struggled somewhat towards the end of his tenure there, but ultimately, I think Spencer Rattler has a dark horse chance to actually start and succeed with the Saints this year. If they fire Dennis Allen and they get a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, I would not be shocked if Spencer Rattler actually is a starting quarterback for the Saints this year. Is he going to be great? I don't think so, but I would not be shocked if Spencer Rattler actually starts and succeeds with the Saints in some form or fashion, because Derek Carr is such a bad quarterback. Where anything that's younger, quicker, faster, stronger, and cheaper is better than starting Derek Carr. Let's move on to Baker Mayfield, who I think is the epitome of mid. And I like Baker. Again, I'm an Oklahoma Sooner guy. Plant the flag in front of Nick Bosa at Ohio State. Give me the energy. I love it. I love what Baker brings to the Buccaneers. He brings attitude. He brings flair. He brings cockiness. Sometimes it rubs guys the wrong way, and sometimes Baker can't back it up. But other times he beats the Philadelphia Eagles, who are down and out in the playoffs, and almost beats the Lions in the next round too. So I think Baker is hitting kind of this late to mid-20s stride of his career. He's an older guy, been in the league for a while. I think he's about 27, 28 years old. His feet are wet. He knows how the NFL works. He's on team number 3 at this point. He gets how the NFL works now. He fits with the Todd Bowles Buccaneers. He loves slinging that thing deep. Sometimes they'll score 40 points. Sometimes they're lucky to score 10. That's who he is. He's the epitome of mid. I like me some Baker Mayfield, but ultimately, he's nothing better than mid. He's sometimes above average, sometimes below average. Put those together, average those things together, he's mid. All right, next quarterback on the list, I think, is one that is clowned too much, one that maybe has spent too much time playing Call of Duty, and one that I think will actually surprise many folks this year. That is Kyler Mighty Mouse Murray. Again, I'm an OU guy. I watched Kyler Murray be freaking awesome. Awesome. Then he gets hurt. He can never stay healthy. He's too tiny. He quits on his team in the playoffs in 2020. But what the Cardinals are hopefully building out there, if you're a Cardinal fan, I think you should be extremely happy with how your draft just went. You got Marvin Harrison Jr. You're building something up for at least Kyler Murray to show he can be the guy still. I have Kyler Murray sandwiched in between Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins as above average quarterback. And to be completely transparent with you, when Kyler Murray is healthy, which hasn't been much recently, Kyler Murray, to me, is a top 5 or top 10 quarterback, I think when he's at his best, he's a top 10 quarterback. Now, again, he has to stay healthy. The size is a concern. The offensive line with the Cardinals, if he's taking hit after hit after hit, is a concern. So, we will see what Kyler Murray is and becomes, but I think if he can stay healthy for the majority of the season, people will start to see who Kyler Murray used to be coming out of Oklahoma as the number 1 overall pick. I get it. You clown him, Call of Duty, quitting on his team. All these things make sense, but the arm talent's there. The mobility is there. And I think what we saw last year towards the end of the year, him getting actually back on the field post the ACL injury, he should be able to reestablish himself as one of the better quarterbacks in football. Just don't forget about Kyler Murray. That's all I'm saying. Don't forget about Kyler Murray. That brings us to his NFC West counterpart, one of their rivals out there in the NFC West, in Matthew Stafford. I think Matthew Stafford is a top 10 quarterback. He fits right behind Justin Herbert and will ultimately be inside our top 10, just outside of the top 5. I think while Stafford's older, the shoulder is definitely a concern. I think Matthew Stafford at his best is still a top 10 quarterback. When he's healthy, he has arguably the second, third, maybe best arm in the entire NFL. And so with all that said, age, it's a little concerning, but when healthy, Matthew Stafford is awesome. Plays in an offense that benefits him. Kyron Williams on screens. You got Puka and Cooper Kupp and many other receivers in that offense to help him. Again, age is there. Can he ward off and fight off Father Time? Time will tell. But I do think Matthew Stafford at his best, at his healthiest, is a top 10 quarterback still in football. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see this renaissance this year or the next 2 years of Matthew Stafford looks like peak Stafford again, and actually shocks, whether it's San Francisco, whether it's Seattle, or others, and actually makes a run deep in the playoffs if he can stay healthy. I'm going to hold off on Brock Purdy. I do want to leave Niner fans, kind of where does our quarterback sit? And we'll do Geno Smith next, because Geno Smith, just like Baker Mayfield, the epitome of mid. I like Geno. He's a great guy. But man, I'm so tired of Seattle Seahawks fans and my mentions and your mentions and other people's mentions being like, well, your quarterback stinks. Like, brother, you have Geno Smith, who we all like Geno. It's a great story. He's just not very good. Geno Smith will never be the reason you win games. And he will more likely than not be the reason you lose games. He's just existing in this middle ground of, he plays quarterback. He's okay. He's a good guy in the locker room. We like him, but in reality, he's not going to do much for us. He's like a Baker Mayfield of, we like the guy. He's good in the locker room. Everyone seems to be his friend, but ultimately, what does he do? He's a good leader. On the field, there just isn't much else there other than an 18 for 22 or 27 day, 1 touchdown, 1 pick on the off chance he throws 2 touchdowns, and you'll win 8 to 9 games a season. You'll shock a few teams. You'll lose games you're supposed to lose. You'll lose games you are supposed to win. You'll win games you're not supposed to win, and you get the story. He's mid. Okay. Let's get to who you've been waiting for. I see you down there, Robbie, saying almost to who we've been waiting for. Where do I put San Francisco 49ers starting quarterback Brock Purdy? Where does Brock Purdy belong in the top conversation of NFL quarterbacks? Is he top 5? Is he top 10? Does he belong with the Daks and the Goffs and the Murrays and the Cousins and the Hurts in the above average category? I think what Brock Purdy has shown the past 2 seasons, 2 years ago, amazing run to the NFC Championship game, tears the UCL. You're like, oh my goodness, is he ever going to be the same? And then comes back and has an MVP type season, proving all the doubters wrong, taking his team to the Super Bowl and pushing a Niners offense, a Kyle Shanahan offense, to new heights not seen since the Matt Ryan era with the Atlanta Falcons. Brock Purdy, to me, at this very moment, heading in to the 2024-2025 NFL season, sits right behind Matthew Stafford, a healthy Matthew Stafford, in the top 10 category. Can I put him top 5? I don't think he's better than a healthy Joe Burrow. I don't think he's better than CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson, or Patrick Mahomes. But there are some days Brock Purdy is one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm not doing this to be a homer. I'm trying to be fair. Do I think he's top 5? No. Do I think he's top 6, top 7? No. The Brock Purdy being the number 8th ranked quarterback in football seems to be the perfect place for him. He's never wavered. He's always been at least good. His worst day came in the rain against the Ravens on Christmas. And what'd he do the very next week? He bounced back. He beat the Commanders. then took his team on an amazing postseason run and should have won the frickin' Super Bowl. That is who Brock Purdy is. Brock Purdy, to me, today, which by the end of this year might change. This is all subject to change in 1 year's time. By the end of this next season, he may be in the above average category. But as of right now, heading into the year, Brock Purdy is a top 10 quarterback, and right now, my number 8 ranked quarterback in the NFL. I hope you're pleased with that, Niner fans, and if you're not pleased with that being a non-Niner fan, wait till the whole thing is finished, get a complete picture, and hopefully you've been here since the beginning to see where I've ranked all these guys and my reasoning behind them, because look, I don't want to be a homer. I'll tell you how it is. If Brock Purdy stinks one day, he stinks. If he's great one day, he's great. He stunk against the Ravens. He wasn't great against the Browns, and he wasn't great against the Vikings, and he wasn't great against the Bengals. There's nuances there, sure. But Brock Purdy today is a top 10 quarterback no matter what anybody else says. You can talk about skill set. What does Brock Purdy do that other top 10 quarterbacks can't do? Right? He's been more successful than Love. He's been more successful than Dak and Hurts and Lawrence and Goff and Murray and Cousins and Herbert. Like all of the things you can use to poke holes in Brock Purdy's resume simply really don't exist outside of 2 deep playoff runs, an offense that he fits to a T, and the strengths that he has elevate that offense even higher and higher. Okay, moving on to from the literal near top of our list to the very bottom of our list to the you suck category. It is I believe the Seattle Seahawks' new backup quarterback, Sam Howell. I like Sam Howell. He's going to go behind Derek Carr. He just throws too many picks. He's a fine quarterback. He's fine. But the turnovers is what kill me. In the NFL, if you want to be successful, you cannot turn the ball over, and Sam Howell has been a turnover machine. Maybe a new head coaching and regime in Seattle can fix that and help him, but overall, I just don't love Sam Howell as a quarterback. But that takes us back to the near top of our list again, and Josh Allen. Josh Allen is a great quarterback. I think any team playing Josh Allen, he's the ultimate X factor. But Josh Allen sometimes gets in his own way to a point of I can't make him, near Mahomes, right? I think of the 2-3 quarterbacks you can put near Mahomes, I think it's, it is Mahomes himself, obviously, number one. And it's Joe Burrow when healthy and Josh Allen. The issue is Joe Burrow has the injuries, and Josh Allen has himself, where he continually gets in his way. So for that, I will have Josh Allen as my 3rd ranked quarterback in the NFL heading into this year. He's great. Josh Allen can be phenomenal at times. He can shred any defense, where every single Sunday, any given Sunday, he can put up 40 against you. And any given Sunday, he'll have he'll be up by 10, 15, and then he'll burn the house down. Like Robbie says here, Allen's an arsonist, always trying to dig his team out of a hole he created. Josh Allen, for all the good he does, is his own worst enemy. Where the best example of this in prime time against the Jets last year, week 1, Aaron Rodgers goes down. Josh Allen, that should be an easy win. He throws a couple of picks and costs his team the game when playing within the system, being a team manager, being a game manager would have easily won him the game. Now, you love that he can be a hero. You love he can carry your offense. But ultimately, what's holding him back is himself. And if Josh Allen can get past himself, the Buffalo Bills should have been in the freaking Super Bowl last year. And that wasn't all his fault. No one's saying that, but he went through a rocky season last year. He was a major part of that. And coming into this year, with the team they put together, he's going to have to play hero ball even more. And so maybe we see an MVP Josh Allen type season because he's awesome. But ultimately, I wouldn't be shocked if once this season's over with, Josh Allen has fallen down some lists, And he's inside the top 10, but isn't inside top 5s anymore. Simply because, again, he's great, but on a team where he's going to have to play hero ball so much, I would not be shocked if the Bills win 9 games or barely win 10 and lose in the first round of the playoffs because he has to carry the entire team. It reminds me of the Ravens with Lamar Jackson a handful of years ago. When Lamar's the MVP, he's awesome, but they have nobody else around him. And if you can somehow limit Lamar, make him be a point guard, that team is going to struggle. And while Allen and Lamar can elevate their teams, I just worry that this year Josh Allen, while the elevation will be there for the teammates around him, how long can that be sustainable for the Buffalo Bills? I think once you get to around week 12 to 18, things start to fall apart and crumble to a point of, can you actually make a deep playoff run where I just don't know what the quarterback Josh Allen is on the team he's currently on heading into the season. And that brings us to the man who likes to take dark room retreats and smoke ayahuasca. That is Aaron Rodgers. I think right now, if I'm going to give Joe Burrow the benefit of the doubt and say, if he's healthy, he's top 2 to me, I want to give Aaron Rodgers the benefit of the doubt and say, if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, he's a top 10 quarterback. But now there's more concerns of if Aaron Rodgers actually wants to play football and be around his team. Is he worth the top 10 spot? I think so. I think he's fine. I really think Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback. I think had it not been for Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers is the greatest physical talent in regards to arm talent at the quarterback position ever. That's how much I respect Aaron Rodgers. Not talking about him politically, not talking about his off-the-field antics, not talking about him as a person. Just simply on the field, Aaron Rodgers is amazing. But he's almost 40, and he's coming off a torn Achilles. Is he going to be healthy? Is he actually going to last a full year on the MetLife turf? I don't know. I have a hard time believing that, but at least headed into the year, I have no reason to not buy into Aaron Rodgers. If this was last year, he'd be a top 5 quarterback to me. But it's a new year, off an injury, 1 year older. I think he's better than Kirk Cousins still. He's better than Lawrence and Hurts and Prescott and Murray and Goff. I think Aaron Rodgers, at this point in his career, if he is a statue in the pocket, just simply with the arm talent that he has, I think he's still a top 10 quarterback, but his age terrifies me. His aging, being almost 40 off a torn Achilles is not fun. Not fun, and it just mortifies me. Okay, we have 3 backs left, which we have Drake May and we have Tua Tagovailoa. Let's get out the easy ones first. Jacoby Brissett, I have him sandwiched in between Sam Darnold and Drew Luck in the below average category. He's a fine quarterback. I believe he's in Washington now. He's fine. No, he's back in New England now, excuse me. He'll probably start in New England for a couple of weeks, maybe even the whole year, depending on Drake May's production during practice and his development. I like Brissett. Great guy, good leader, a great locker room guy, valuable backup veteran quarterback to have, very similar to Joe Flacco. I think Brissett gets an unfair kind of hit on his record. I think he's unfairly talked about simply because of when he was in Indianapolis, he was pretty good. And had Andrew Luck not retired, who knows where things go, but I think Brissett is underrated, but I don't think he's good enough to be mid. Now, there's a conversation to be had that in 1 year's time, players like Brissett, Darnold, Minshew, Jones, and Deshaun Watson could jump players in the mid category like Fields and Wilson and Will Levis. Sure. I just think Brissett at least brings a level of stability to a young team, a rebuilding team, retooling team, a team that really has nothing, like the Patriots, having Brissett there just brings a level of calmness where if things go awry, we are going to be okay. And we'll talk about his, backup potential starting quarterback behind him in Drake May. I am someone that actually, unlike Kenny Niners in the chat who says May is a bust, I actually think Drake May is going to be okay. Now, that's based off him as a player, but him in his first year as a rookie is really set up to fail. So much so, I think I have him ranked as my worst quarterback based off success level I expect this year. Do I think he will play? Yes. But the Patriots have nobody. With the new regime, his number 3 overall pick, I just think they set, if Caleb Williams has maybe the greatest place ever for a year one quarterback to be in, Drake May has one of the worst. He has no weapons around them. It's Kendrick Bourne and nobody else. Yes, they just extended Ramondre Stevenson today, but the Patriots have nobody. And I think for a player like Drake May, when you have no help behind him and you have a regime change and you set guys up for failure like that, well, what happens? That's when, busts start to be created, guys that get rattled, lose their confidence, and start to fall apart. I hope that's not the case for Drake May, but ultimately, I cannot put him higher than, Penix and Rattler on the list. He's not ahead of McCarthy, who will play this year. Daniels will play. Nix will definitely play, and Caleb Williams will start almost every single game, barring health. So I think Drake May is set up to have the worst rookie season of the first-round rookies, minus Michael Penix, who shouldn't play for the next 2 or 3 years anyways. So I like Drake May as a player. I think he can be successful. Just this year, it's not a good place to be for a young year one quarterback. And we'll finish with Tua Tagovailoa, our last quarterback in the tier ranking. Where does Tua Tagovailoa rank? Maybe the next guy to get paid big money. Maybe the next guy to reset the quarterback market. Where do I have Tua Tagovailoa ranked? I think for Tua, the way his season began was awesome. The way the season ended was horrible. Now, they've paid Jalen Waddle. Tyreek Hill wants a new deal. Tua wants a new deal eventually, right? They've gutted that team. They made a lot of changes. Can Tua carry the offense? They believe he's the guy. I'm not too sure. I have Tua Tagovailoa ranked behind Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts and just ahead of Trevor Lawrence in the above average category. I do not think Tua is top 10. If you're putting up 70 against the Broncos, but you're 1-9 against winning teams over the last 2 years, I cannot put you inside the top 10. So that rounds out our first edition of the quarterback tier ranking heading in to the 2024-2025 NFL season. If you like this video, leave a like, share your ranking down below in the comments. I want to know where you put the quarterbacks. Where did I go right? Where did I go wrong? Do you hate what I did? Do you love what I did? Share your ranking in the comment below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave that review. You can follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. And if you want to see any of these quarterbacks play live, if you're a Niner fan and you want to see Brock Purdy, and for any reason you want to see players like Jared Stidham and Aiden O'Connell, maybe Joe Flacco's back out there slinging that thing, you want to see any of these guys play, use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com. You can save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Thank you so much to people like Royce, who says Purdy is going to win the Super Bowl and the MVP. Thank you to people like Kenny, who says Brock came off the bench cold and won 5 games in a row in 2 playoff games. Ben returns early and wins 8 in a row. For me, that tops Stroud. Bobo, you're always in the chat. Thank you so much. I don't know if you guys are still here. Thank you, Robbie, who says LOL and was making jokes about Aaron Rodgers. Going up the entire chat to people like Turbo. Thank you so much. I know, Turbo, you like Derek Carr. I hate to tell you, I'm not a big fan, but I will say this. Thank you so much for people like Runzola20 calling me crazy. That's what I want to see in the chat. Share your opinions on the tier ranking, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on YouTube. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave that review. And until next time, my name is Sterling Bennett, saying, stay faithful.